Hello and welcome to the season finale of More Layers. I'm Seth Mariano.
And I'm Jordan Smith, and for those that may be newer to our show, the reason why this is a season finale is because every year Seth and I do a theatrical production in the late summer, early fall. And around the time the rehearsals begin, we will take a break from this so we can focus on that. And then once the show's over, we resume. And since our rehearsals start on Monday of next week, this will be our final episode for now, but we will be back eventually.
Yeah, but this one should be a really good one because we are today looking at the same story that our upcoming production is going to cover, specifically Peter Pan.
And just to clarify, we are talking about the animated film.
Yes. Yeah.
There are several Peter Pan movies out there, movies that take place doing the Peter Pan story or some variation of it. Of course, there's been some live-action remakes of sorts. There's the Hook movie with Robin Williams and Dustin Hoffman. But we're specifically looking at the animated one.
Yeah, there's also the Peter Pan Goes Wrong show, which you mentioned a couple times. Not exactly the same, but I haven't seen it, but I'm sure it's funny.
Well, hopefully there will be a group get-together or something in the near future where we can do that. And for our viewers, if you are fans of the Goes Wrong show, do not worry, we have that one written down on a list of ideas. So there's a good chance at some point we will talk about it.
Yep. But in the meantime, Peter Pan, specifically the early 1950s Disney animated film, it was an interesting time because it was a little more than a decade after Walt had put out his first animated feature, and he was coming, you might say, toward the home stretch of his animated filmmaking career as he was getting ready to launch the Disneyland theme park, which would open in '55, and kind of focusing a little bit more on that, I think. And but it is perhaps one of the best that he put out. I just watched it, and it is very well made.
Yeah, I do remember some elements of it, but I made sure to watch it through because I remember loving it as a kid, and I still love it now, and we'll be getting into the reasons why as we go. But if you're not familiar with the story, the basic premise is that Peter Pan finds some young kids in a nursery and takes them to a place called Neverland, where the whole idea is when you're there, you don't grow up. You basically don't age.
Yeah, and so it does pretty closely but loosely follow the play by J.M. Barrie on which it is based, which I saw a couple times when I was a kid, and then more recently when my school did it again, and one of our AU volunteers, or who would become one of our AU volunteers, was a part of it. And of course now we're going to be doing it soon. But anyway, so the film opens up kind of establishing the Darling family. And one interesting difference from the show, from what I remember, is that the kids, it's established early on that they're aware of this Peter Pan, and they're fully convinced that he is a real existing person, but the parents, or at least the dad, don't really believe it.
Yeah, at least in the animated film, when it comes to the parents, the dad definitely doesn't. And the mom, she might not either, but she might also just be chalking it up to the kid's imagination, and she's just encouraging them to have an imagination. But there are variations where even she claims she's seen this mysterious boy at the window.
Right. It is in the dialogue of the stage show. I remember she did mention seeing some unknown person at the window, and she was able to actually catch his shadow as he was running away and put it in the drawer.
And at some point, after the parents finally leave, because the father, Mr. Darling, he was looking for his cufflinks, and when he finally gets them back, Nana, the dog, is pretty much the caretaker of these kids. I don't know what they did to train the dog to do this, but some of the things she does for these kids is incredible.
Yeah, well, she's not exactly Snoopy, but pretty close anyway.
Yeah. But eventually, there's some commotion, and before they leave, Mr. Darling kind of blames the dog and attaches her to her doghouse outside.
Yeah. It's pretty clear from the beginning that he's really stressed. He's got this like important business dinner or something, and he really wants to make sure it goes well so he can continue to provide for his family. And he's getting anxious, wants to make sure everything is just right, and when the chaos that goes on with the dog and to an extent kind of the kids is kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back for him.
Yeah, and after the parents do leave, who shows up but Peter Pan? I would assume that he immediately knew that his shadow wasn't attached to him anymore when he left that house, so he came back for that one. Otherwise, how would he know where it is? And as far as I know, up until the entire time where he does get his shadow back, like you would think that there might be some oversights where he has a shadow briefly in certain lighting, but I don't think he does.
Yeah. So it's got to be missing then.
Yeah, and then when he does finally get it back with the help of his little fairy friend Tinkerbell, Wendy realizes he's in there and helps him get the shadow back on by sewing it. And this is one of those creative things, like how would that work? But suspension of disbelief, it's a fairy tale type of story. And then in response, he offers to take her, and by extension, John and Michael, to Neverland. Part of the problem here is that Tinkerbell already really does not like Wendy. This could be a jealousy thing, or she just really likes Peter herself for some reason, but yeah, she really does not like Wendy at all.
Yeah, Tinkerbell is kind of, at least in this movie, written as very much a possessive diva type. Kind of like if you saw the movie Singin' in the Rain, the diva Lena Lamont. Almost like that a little bit. Yeah, and yeah, she's pretty clingy. Probably doesn't want to, like, share Peter in probably any aspect with anybody. No, I'm his fairy. I do his bidding. Even though it seems from the reaction shots that she's probably frustrated with kind of being basically his servant, but at the same time, she's kind of possessive.
Yeah, she still sticks her neck out for him, even if it's something she doesn't necessarily want to do. And she goes to crazy lengths to quote-unquote get him back or do away with Wendy, which we'll get into in a moment. But as all the kids wake up and they start flying to Neverland, the kids try to get Nana to join them, but Nana is still attached to the rope, so even though she soars off the ground for a moment, she can't follow them, which honestly, made me kind of sad because I would have loved to see Nana go with him.
Yeah, honestly, when I rewatched the movie recently, I kind of forgot about that. I that guess the dog didn't really get to go with them. They did get some pixie dust on her and get her to levitate off the ground briefly, but that was about it.
Yeah. Although at the same time, it did make me think of the moment from the beginning of Shrek where Donkey gets the dust on him. It's like, hey, I can fly. He can fly. He can talk.
Yeah. Yeah, and then it became like a classic cartoon moment. He's hanging in the air for a moment and then just drops.
Yep. Now, granted, this did have their own version of Peter Pan, and was basically like a spoof of fairy tales.
Yeah.
In any case, they do make it to Neverland, and we already see another example of Tinkerbell trying to get rid of Wendy, because she shows up to the Lost Boys and tells them that there's a Wendy bird that they need to shoot down.
Yes. And they get the Lost Boys basically for those who don't know, the Lost Boys are the young kids who basically live on this island along with Peter Pan. And according to the dialogue of the stage show, basically, when someone isn't looking, they're little boys that go off on their own, and if they're not claimed in a week, they're sent to live in Neverland. So anyway, the Lost Boys using stuff like slingshots, and I even think some pelter with stones as well, trying to shoot down Wendy, assuming, because Tinkerbell told them, that it was Peter Pan who wanted them to do so.
And thankfully, even though Wendy was knocked down, she ultimately turned out okay, and Peter found out what Tinkerbell told them. So, of course, he wasn't too thrilled.
Yeah, and he interrogates her, and apparently she doesn't have even a teeny shameful bone in her body, because she, maybe under a little duress, she does admit, yes, I did that.
There's even a couple moments where she looks proud of it, too.
Yeah.
Now that Peter Pan doesn't banish her yet, I don't think. That's not until later. But she kind of nods like, yeah, I did that. But they quickly become friends because the whole idea of Peter Pan bringing her there so they could have some type of mother figure to tell stories.
And taken then, around the same time, we are introduced to the central villain of this Peter Pan universe, Captain Hook, a pirate leader, with a metal hook replacing both of his hands, because as the legend goes, Peter Pan removed Hook's other hand in a duel or something and fed it to a crocodile, who has since been following him around, supposedly trying to get another bite of him.
And this whole story, Captain Hook is trying to get revenge on Peter Pan for that incident. And depending on the iteration of the story, especially if it's the stage version, sometimes Mr. Darling and Captain Hook will be played by the same person. Not entirely sure why. I mean, the last time we did it, I don't think we had that happen. It's one of those things where it's not needed, but it could be a nice little connection if it is played by the same person. I want to say in this animated film, they are at least voiced by the same guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't know, but I'd have to look that up. But in any case, This crocodile is also apparently carrying a clock in his belly that he has swallowed. And so when he hears the clock go tick tock, Hook knows what's coming. And it's especially fun to watch the crocodile approach in this animated Disney version, because the first time you can see like parts of his first mate Smee's and even Hook's probably kind of twitching to the rhythm of the ticking clock, and then of course the crocodile slowly shows up and then over the course of the movie keeps chasing him around, chomping for him and stuff.
And even when he hears the crocodile, Hook goes from this conniving, almost terrifying villain in some aspects to a sniveling coward, constantly begging for Smee to help or save him. And the first time around, it works pretty much flawlessly because all Smee really did was like basically shoo him away. And the crocodile, while kind of frustrated, he does leave, or at least seems to.
No, but this crocodile's not done with him. He's after what he wants, and he's gonna get it whatever it takes.
Oh yeah, every once in a while, the crocodile will show back up and terrify Captain Hook, but at least the first time he gets shooed away, so they go back to their business, and then even when they kind of first get to Neverland, at the very least, Captain Hook sees them through a telescope and fires at them. Doesn't hit any of them, but he at least now knows that Peter Pan is back and he's brought other kids with him.
And once they get there, they do have kind of a bit of fun. John leads Michael and the Lost Boys kind of throughout the wild, and they run into the Indians, referred to in the movie as Redskins or Red Men, whatever. And they have among them a princess named Tiger Lily, who becomes a pretty important character later on. And meanwhile, Peter Pan introduces Wendy to the mermaids that live on the island. There's like a whole group of them kind of lingering around a rock with water. And they're basically written, these mermaids are kind of written as like sort of the gaga cheerleading types in like an old movie or something. And they pretty much share the same uninformed prejudice that Tinker Bell has against Wendy as well. And they try to take her down as well. But then Hook shows up and they all hide.
It starts off pretty smoothly enough where they like to hear the stories of Peter Pan's adventures, but once he even mentions another girl, they get upset. And I believe this is like the one scene that they're into. Like, we don't see them again after this.
Yeah. No, we don't.
Right. And once the name Hook is mentioned, they just run and hide.
Yeah. Yeah. What the crocodile is to Hook, Hook is to these ladies.
And there's even been some theories that it might have been Captain Hook who was the ultimate demise for Ariel's mother. But that's just a fan theory.
I don't know. Maybe that's not too far of a stretch.
Yeah, there's been some other connections before. Another popular example is the speculation and supposed confirmation that Tarzan is the long-lost brother of Anna and Elsa. But in any case, Tiger Lily does get kidnapped eventually by Hook, and to try and save her, Peter uses his apparently incredible impression ability to perfectly mimic the sound of Hook to try and get Smee to release her. And at first it works, but then the real Hook shows up, tells Smee to put her back, and at this point Smee is just really confused.
Yeah. And then Peter Pan kind of gets a little goofy, messes around with him, runs away, does like running away while staying hidden from the person trying to chase me type thing, and yeah, it's probably a little bit more fun in this Disney animated version because he actually perfectly disguises his voice to make an uncanny Hook impression, and then instead of prancing around and pretending to be a woman afterwards, in this movie, he just kind of runs around while keeping himself hidden from Hook the entire time, and eventually is able to put him in the line of fire of the crocodile or whatever and make it out unharmed.
And in the process, he rescues Tiger Lily, brings her back to her tribe, and through their own ways, they express their gratitude, and Peter Pan is kind of made like a chief figure, or like a... I'm not sure what the official title was, I can't remember. But he gets like a chief's headpiece,
Yeah.
and is given that special honor.
Yeah. And there's this whole big ceremony, which of course then there's the What Makes the Red Man Red song. And the brothers are really into it, but Wendy, being refreshingly, although she may not be that much older than the boys, she shows to be a more mature one compared to them, and not really wanting to go along with any of this.
Right, and even in today's world, there are some people who would raise eyebrows at depictions of Indians like this, but at least for the time being, it was seen as okay. So they got at least a couple scenes. They had their own song, and once Peter is put into this chief-like position, he kind of carries it with him as they go back to their own hideout. And the boys at least seem fine with it, but Wendy is not having it. And I think it's around this point that she's like, we need to go back home.
Yeah. And after having a little heart-to-heart with the Lost Boys, and kind of talking about, the role a mom plays in a kid's life and all that, and singing that one other song,
Yeah.
the Lost Boys are convinced to go back to London with the Darling kids. And so, they all do so, they all head off, but in what is probably the most noticeable difference, instead of sneaking a liquid poison in Peter Pan's vitamin supplement,
Mm-hmm.
what they do in the movie is Hook leaves him a bomb wrapped in gift wrap.
And he could have easily been caught in it, and he almost was, because the gift specifically said, do not open until this time. Because the idea was the moment he opens it, it explodes. But leading up to this point, Tinkerbell had kind of agreed to work with Hook after he was able to get on her good side, sympathizing with her. But at the last second, she has a change of heart, realizing what's going on, and goes to save Peter and gets the bomb out of his reach.
Yeah. which probably doesn't have the same emotional sting as Tinkerbell drinking the poisoned medicine in the stage show and almost dying. But this was a Disney film, and well, there's high enough stakes, I guess. But yeah, it works.
And we don't see her actively in the dying process. We just see Peter looking for her as he eventually finds her with a very faint, flickering light. But he eventually saves her. They go back. He fights Hook for the third or fourth time in this film. But he decides he's not going to fly at all. As because they kind of make a mutual agreement on what the rules of the fight are. And he almost doesn't make it out, but he ultimately prevails. And Hook has his final escape hijinks with the crocodile. And honestly, this leads to one of my favorite villain exits, if you will, in any of these Disney movies, where after barely escaping the crocodile's mouth several times, the jaws of the crocodile snap so hard that he gets launched across the water, skipping like a rock. And as he's calling for Smee this time, he's like, Smee!
Oh yeah, the physical gags are really fun to watch.
Oh,
The
for sure.
animation is just like it's extreme cartoon. It's pretty funny stuff.
Like aside from that, there's another one that made me laugh where Hook tries to leap away from the crocodile, ends up falling in his mouth, and as he pries the croc's mouth open, Smee, trying to hit the crocodile, accidentally hits Hook in the head.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so much going on in that last moment. Hook skidding across the water, him going under the boat as the pirates go into the air with each row, crocodile going underneath it too. And once he's sent flying, of course, the Darling kids head back home, and we find out after they take control of this ship that the boys decided to stay in Neverland, at least for now, because they felt at the time they just were not ready.
But they all do eventually go back, and in an interesting creative move, instead of just sailing the sea, they fly the ship through the air with the magic of Tinkerbell's pixie dust.
Which makes me wonder in hindsight if the people who made the Disney movie Treasure Planet got inspiration from that. But since Treasure Planet was made long after this movie was, it's hard to say for sure. But when the kids do get back, the next time we see Mr. Darling, he's feeling terrible about how he acted earlier, which shows that, yeah, he didn't intend to be harsh or nasty.
No.
And he's actively bringing Nana back up to the nursery.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you can see the sort of, I guess you could call it a cloud silhouette of the Jolly Roger pirate ship flying through the air, and everyone sees it, including the parents.
Yep.
And while the dad may have said earlier that he didn't believe in this whole Peter Pan stuff, he slowly kind of lets it slip that he has a sort of boyhood memory of seeing something like that or something.
And at the very least, he opens his mind up to the possibility that, yeah, there could be this Peter Pan or Neverland, Captain Hook, whatever.
Yeah.
And the cloudy ship in the sky is one of the last things you see before the movie officially ends. And what's kind of interesting is that there was a movie that came out much more recently. It was like a Chip and Dale live action animation hybrid, where we find out that apparently this boy that was Peter Pan in this movie was just an actor. And once he started actually growing up, he wasn't getting much work at all, and he started to do some not so pleasant things. Now, I haven't seen that movie, so I don't know. Uh, Now, some people speculate that this was kind of a depiction of the actor who voiced Peter Pan in this 50s animated movie,
Yeah.
because like he voiced this character, people loved it, but once he got older and his voice got deeper, it's like he was basically blacklisted, for the lack of a better word.
Yeah.
I don't think he lived very long in the end either, unfortunately.
Yeah, I remember like hearing or reading that he died young of a drug overdose.
Something like that. I didn't think to research that particular topic, particularly because we were mostly focusing on the movie itself.
Right.
But yeah, then we of course feel sympathy for this actor and his family. I don't know who among them is still around, but
Yeah.
it really is heartbreaking stuff. But as for the movie itself, it was really good, and it really could have been the potential Kickstarter to his career.
Yeah. Well, even before that, he had done like Song of the South with Disney, and
Oh,
I think by now he was a pretty well established actor. So I wouldn't say he was necessarily unknown, but this may be what he will, forever be famous for, most of all.
which definitely makes sense. It was after Disney really got its footing, and Song of the South, especially now, is not the most positively received film. So to have something like this follow it up and still be remembered and watched to this day,
Yeah.
it's very impactful. He definitely did some good work with this film.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a very faithful adaptation, I'd say, to the play, but they also, I think, kind of found their own creative angle on it, where it could be really fun for the kids and their parents or families, and got their own creative music in it, and definitely a good cast of talented voice actors like Catherine Beaumont, who voiced Wendy and earlier voiced Disney's Alice in Wonderland. I think she was one of the highlights.
And I feel like I was going to add something to that. I don't quite remember what it was, but long story short, if you have not seen this movie, strongly recommend. Oh, yes. So you mentioning that this movie was after the stage production was made.
Yeah.
Um, this is something that Disney often did, especially for their animated stuff leading into the 90s and 2000s, where a lot of Disney's movies, stories, were based on something that had already been written or produced. A lot of their Renaissance stories were based on pre-existing books. And a lot of the time, those books were significantly darker than what Disney created.
And then, of course, in the 90s, we started getting Disney theatrical adaptations with Beauty and the Beast and Lion King, and a lot of the content that you see from Disney, and perhaps particularly in their earlier years, was based on pre-existing texts like fairy tales, novels, and stories that probably would have otherwise fallen into a super deep obscurity, but they found some lasting audiences with these animated takes on them.
Yeah, and their approach is kind of like how I approach my acting in theater, where if it's based on a pre-existing character, or if there's pre-existing versions of that character, I often will take bits and pieces of those for inspiration and then put my own spin on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, going into this AU production, I've seen the show before, so I might have a little one actor or two to kind of take inspiration from. I'm still going to try and make it my own, but I'll have a little, I guess, frame of reference.
And I have performed in it once myself before with this particular theater group.
Yeah.
Granted, this was roughly 13 years ago, so there's still a lot of things that are very fuzzy. And as of right now, as far as I know, neither of us know what character or characters we're playing yet. We usually don't find out what characters we are until the first or second day of rehearsals. But the next time we have an episode, we'll probably kind of talk about our experience with the show, which will end in the middle of October this year. And then at that point, we'll of course talk about the characters we play.
Yep. Well, until next season, thanks everyone for streaming us on YouTube and YouTube Music. And feel free to drop your questions and comments anytime, even if it is off season, and just say what you have to.
Yeah, just because we're not making any episodes doesn't mean we wouldn't interact with our audience. If you have ideas for future episodes, maybe as the show's going on, we can post some updates on how the show's going, or announce there what roles we have, or something to that effect. Because really, we want people to know about this organization and the message it's trying to send, that just because these people have disabilities doesn't mean they're incapable of putting on a spectacular performance.
Yeah. One quote I like to think of is one of our directors once said, "Talent is everywhere. You just have to create the atmosphere for it to blossom."
Yeah, and when we had this Inspire performance a couple months ago, one of the things that I mentioned to our audience is that all these guys have amazing talent and skill. All they simply need is the opportunity to show it.
Yeah. And of course, the right directors.
And of course, we have plenty of those.
Yeah. Yeah, well, until next season, everybody take care.
So long, everyone.